Hello, everybody. It's a narrator again, and welcome to 10 True Scary Stories that they all come from Brosgrim and Let's Not Meet subreddit. Keep in mind, I don't own any of these. These are just completely random people. I have no association with them. I'm just narrating them for your enjoyment. They'll all be linked in the description, and if you're an owner of one of these and you really don't want it being narrated, talk to me, and I'll remove it. So, yeah. And sorry I haven't been getting videos out lately. It's really hard to, considering it's the end of a school year and shitty testing and stuff has shown up. So yeah. But after about a week, here it is. Let's get into it. Enjoy. Okay, so this is my first set of many scary stories that I will share with y'all on here. This first story personally didn't happen to me, but it is still extremely messed up and scary. Also, before I begin, excuse my spelling or grammar and other bullshit like that. I'm also not the best writer. So this story starts in the winter of 2010. My half-brother Christian had just moved out of my mom and dad's house. I'm 16. He bought this house in the nice upper-class suburbs of Dayton, Ohio, called Oakwood. Before I go any further, I should say that almost no crime happens in Oakwood. This is why everyone was so shocked by this. Anyways, my brother was unpacking his stuff when he heard a knock at his door. His dog Gordo went apeshit. From what I knew, Gordo didn't bark at family members, so my brother went at the door to see who it was. It turned out to be his next-door neighbor. Let's call him Daniel. He was welcoming my brother to the neighborhood, and my brother told him that he seemed like a very nice guy. He owned his own local business and was very wealthy. He gave my brother a basket of some sorts. And before he left, he said that if he needed anything, he could just walk next door and let himself in. In Oakwood, everyone leaves their doors unlocked since nothing like what I'm about to mention happens. So a couple of days later, my brother was about to go to the realtor when his car wouldn't start. Remembering that his new neighbor, Daniel, had said a couple of days earlier, he decided to go over to his house to ask to borrow some jumper cables. When he walked next door, he went to a mansion and knocked on the door. A woman answered the door. My brother asked if Daniel was home. Then the woman said something messed up. No one lives in that house. It was abandoned years ago, and who's Daniel? My brother got chills down his spine, and being the noisy bastard that he is, he walked over to the house. Overgrown roots growing all over it and shit. The door was unlocked, and as soon as my brother opened the door, a vomit-inducing stench emerged from the house. My brother called the cops, fearing a dead body, but then deciding to find out what the fuck was going on, he walked into the bedroom and found a dead body, cut in half. The cops arrived and identified the woman as kidnapped 2 years earlier. My brother still hasn't forgotten the experience and is going through therapy to cope with the disturbing discovery. Just a bit of background information on me. My name is Taylor. I just turned 17 a couple weeks ago, and I've recently been getting very alarming knocks at my door. One night I decided to watch Boomerang. If you don't know what Boomerang is, it's a channel that the old classic cartoons like the Flintstones, Top Cat, Wacky Racer, stuff like that. I was making popcorn until I heard a loud bang at my door. This really scared the hell out of me, as if I thought it was a friend pranking me. To give an idea of my house, when you go on the inside, the living room is on your left, and the gigantic flat screen TV is right in the corner of the wall, and the door has a big glass overall frame on it. I took a kitchen knife and went to the door, and I said, "Hello?" The man at the door was breathing hard, saying, "Please let me in." I froze for a moment as I peeked out the blinds and saw the man had one hand in his hoodie pocket and just staring at the door. As I go upstairs to grab my phone, the knocking became harder and louder, and a lot more aggressive. And he began shouting, "You better open this door before I bust my way in." I got my dog Luna and brought her into the bedroom with me. Now, I live in a double-wide home in the middle of nowhere, and the nearby police station was 15 minutes away. I dialed 911, and the next thing that happened made my blood freeze. He was hitting the side of the house saying, Taylor, come out, wherever you are. I tried not to cry as the operator kept me calm. About 7 minutes after the police showed up, alongside my parents who were terrified as fuck of what happened, they found the man crouching in a bush near my house, and he is known to be a drug user and a serial rapist. They have done this to many girls under the age of 18. What was found in his hoodie pocket scares the shit out of me. He had a butcher's knife, duct tape, and zip ties. I'm just so glad I didn't answer the door. God knows what would have happened to me. I'm just happy it's all over with. My parents got a security system for our house, and I hope I never have another encounter like this again. So before I start, let me say that this is all true, even though it sounds a little far-fetched. Me and my friend, who we call Sam, have been friends for 12 years, and this happened when I was around 8 at the time. He was 12. He was my neighbor, and I would usually go over to his house every day and spend the night if I could. Also, this was before cell phones had a lot of games and stuff on them, so like flip phones were the popular stuff. All Sam and I had was the original Xbox and the PlayStation 2. Sam and I were playing Halo for most of the night, and at around, I'd say 11 or 11:30, he switched to the television and we went to sleep. And he told me that if I got scared or anything, to wake him up. Now, his closet has always scared him, and he's always felt like something was watching him from in there. However, the only true experience he had was simply sleep paralysis. He closed his closet door, and we went to sleep. I'd say around 4 a.m. I didn't have a phone, so I didn't know for sure. I heard something clanking in his kitchen. I simply thought it was his dad, and he does wake up quite early for his job, so I brushed it off as him getting breakfast or something. After around, I'd say 5 minutes of him clanking a fork around or something, I decided to get up for some odd reason and went into the kitchen. I saw a black figure and a fork in his hand. However, there was no plate or food or anything. I thought it was just weird, so I decided to walk back to Sam's room and wake him up. And then I heard a voice like his dad say, "Come back, David." David is the name I got and his dad always called me Little Man. I froze. He said to come back again. I was already scared, but I managed to say, "Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you." He then got up and walked towards me. My heart was racing and I didn't know what to do. So I yelled for Sam's name. Nothing. I yelled it again at the top of my lungs, and again, nothing. And this thing kept getting closer to me. I hit the light switch and I saw something I wish I didn't. I saw a red-looking figure with messy, long black hair that was about 6-7 feet. It didn't look human. When I hit the lights, it screamed a high-pitched sound and then ran away into Sam's room. And I tried to wake him up, but I couldn't. I laid in the bed, hearing no weird noises, and finally managed to fall asleep. The next morning, I was awoken to Sam shaking me and telling me to wake up and giving me a huge hug. He said last night he got up and heard and saw the same exact thing that I did. I asked him what time. He said around 4 a.m. I asked him if he saw what I described. He stopped and said yes. We both pretty much started crying and went out of the room. There was still fork on the table. His dad was still home and asked us why we were upset. After we told him, he seemed to not believe us, but he didn't say he didn't. I didn't go spend the night for years, but nothing has happened since. Nothing. I don't know what the demon thing wanted with us, but he manipulated us, and his dad's voice. Either a coincidence to us having the same dream or not. Demon, let's not ever meet again. This happened 4 or 5 years ago when I was still in high school. At the time, I was really into chat rooms, since living in a small town like mine, one can get bored with all the familiar faces. I met this guy, Dave, in one of our rooms where the focus was about literature and manga. And at first I didn't really pay attention to the stuff he said, since the type of stuff he was into were things I was not. So one night I decided to stay past my usual bedtime and hang out in the chat room in hopes to find a good friend who lived on the other side of the planet. The chat room was pretty empty, only a few people were on, including Dave. I was going to log off when he caught my attention with a simple hello in my name. I decided to indulge him and talk with him until my friend logged on. We talked for hours, and I was honestly surprised how much we had in common, so after that we became close. Our lightly talks became a regular thing, and after a few weeks of talking, Dave asked for my kick. At first I opposed it. I've been told to be cautious about these sorts of things, but Dave somehow convinced me to give it up. Now our nightly talks became everyday talks and became more personal. I didn't think it was a bad thing. I told him things that I was comfortable in telling him, and then things started to go downhill. He asked for my Skype at one point, and like a freaking idiot, I gave it to him, thinking that it was okay. I thought there would be no harm in this, that the world outside my stupid little town were safe and just full of roses. Of course, it wasn't. He started to call me and ask me if I could speak to him. I said, "Oh sure, why not?" And now our conversations were verbal. He then pushed for me more and more. He asked for me for my name, where I lived, where I was from, and pictures of me and my family. He told me that I was a cold-hearted bitch and could never have friends because I don't know what those are. And I believed him. Dave had me wrapped around his fingers at this point. He told me that if I gave him these things, I would possibly be true friend and possibly boyfriend. But I still refused. The most I gave up was the state I lived in. I was honestly getting scared, so I decided to stop talking to him. That, of course, made him angry. Threats started to come. He told me that he would find me and rape me, and even have some sort of his own sick friends to join in on the fun. At one point, I think he even said one of his friends ran a sex slave trade. Like, holy shit. How did I land myself in this? He consciously spam called me on Skype and messaged me on Kick with things like, "You're so beautiful," or "Please come back," or "If you don't come back, I can't be held responsible for what will happen." I was beginning to fear for my family, so I screenshotted everything, every last fucking photo and screen and message, and saved it. Then I deleted everything, my Kick, my Skype, history, my account, everything, and unplugged my computer and sat in my room hoping that this would all blow over. The guy was not bluffing. My phone started to get calls from random numbers and acting wonky. At some points, I just turned it off when I was forced to turn it on. A guy would talk to the other end and tell me things that a stranger should not know. I was honestly going crazy. The whole time I used the computer was at school, or the library, and I would read things about people who went through this. I became super paranoid and never went out at night and always went straight home after school with an eye on my back of my head. My blinds were always closed, and I asked my mom if anything weird happened here because I didn't tell anyone. It was hell for me. At one point, there was a car that was always parked outside of my house with a man sitting there, and sheltered myself for a week. It was over after a month, and I slowly let myself out. The call stopped. The man left my block. I didn't feel like I was being watched anymore. Everything was becoming normal. So, Dave, let's not meet again. To start this off, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I am currently a 17-year-old female, but when this story takes place, I was about 14 years old in the 8th grade. This literally makes me paranoid to this day to think about it. At the time, I was kind of young, so I didn't really realize the bizarre behavior this girl permitted. Again, this happened at the very beginning of the year, and I sat next to this girl. She was puny looking and kind of scraggly. She gave off some weird vibes, but I couldn't understand what it was about her. Something was definitely off. She had these overall glasses and short, chopped hair, and it looked like a 5-year-old grabbed a pair of scissors and cut her hair. That's besides the point. The first date wasn't anything weird until I left to go to my next period, and I reached into my backpack to grab some chapstick, and I found a crumpled up paper. I honestly thought it was odd because I'm very OCD and very organized. So I opened it up and it was a letter. My name was at the top of it. I felt very strange and put it back in my bag. I was anxious to read it, but I was also scared too at the same time. I quickly ran into the bathroom, into a stall, and opened the note. I still have it to this day. I'll try and insert a picture of it if I can find it, but I remember it going something like this. Hi, you're very pretty. We should date. Love, Brittany. I couldn't help but feel flattered and slightly confused. I didn't even know a Brittany. But then it all occurred to me. I left my backpack open when I went to the bathroom my last period, and I just kept in mind that I am straight and not interested in females. I knew it was that girl, but I didn't know her name, so I assumed it was Brittany. The next couple of weeks were fine. I was noticing that she would stare at me, and when I looked at her, she would look away quickly. I felt so awkward and uncomfortable around here, but I continued to stay nice to her because I'm not a rude person. She would try to make weird conversations, but I kind of shut them down. But then, every now and then, I would have people come up to me and say, Brittany wants to talk to you alone, or Brittany wants to ask you out. I would just decline and continue back to whatever I was doing. The girl never really came up to me, but I would notice her following me in the halls, and she would go into the bathroom at the same time I would. Yeah, I told my mom about it, and she said to not go near her, but I just felt bad. People can tell if you're avoiding them until a couple of days later, and everything changed. I requested to move seats, and my teacher understood. They seemed to make Brittany very angry, because I was the only one that moved, so maybe it looked like I was trying to be rude, which wasn't my intention at all. Her face got red like she was mad and embarrassed, or something like that. I felt like such an asshole, but it needed to be done. I had a lot of issues when I was younger, like insecurity issues. So my school counselor would always calm me down and check up on me and talk to me. So I left class for around 25 minutes, and when I got back, I felt strange. I'm not sure how to describe it. It was just really weird. We were reading, so I had no need to go into my backpack at all. At the end of class, when everyone left, I reached in my backpack for some gum, and again, I felt a crumpled up paper. My heart stopped, and I felt like I was going to puke. Now, to remind you, when I moved seats, I was halfway across the room from Brittany. So that means she walked all the way over to my seat and put another letter in my backpack. There was ink smudged all over the paper like it was smudged. I opened it, and this is what I remember it saying. McKenna, which is my name. I noticed you stopped sitting by me. Why? I really like you, and that hurt my feelings a lot. I tried to find someone else to like, but everyone else gets me in trouble. This part scared me because that means she's done this to other people too. I really need to talk to you alone. Please meet me by the bathrooms or at the back of the school. I need to reason with you because you don't like me. I have really bad visions, and I need you to love me. I love you. Love, Brittany. My heart was rapidly beating. I felt so sick that I called my mom and told her everything. She picked me up when she was freaking out. I handed her the letter. She was extremely close to calling the police, but Brittany hadn't done anything to me, so there wasn't any point. Later on in the year, I changed my class period, and I was advised to ignore her at all costs. It was terrible looking behind my shoulder and seeing her there all the time. I would constantly find myself rushing to class and holding in my pee, so I wouldn't go to the bathroom and see her. Thankfully, nothing happened, and she moved a week before school ended. There was a rumor that she was put into a mental hospital, but that part is unknown. So, Brittany, I hope we never meet again. This story isn't exactly one of those ones where someone almost dies, and it's so freaking scary. But it's really creepy to think about. My cousin's neighbor went into foreclosure after not paying taxes for 2 months. We'll call my cousin Dan. For the record, they were broke because they still do. owe all of her money to a drug lord in Massachusetts, so they disappeared completely. No one had any idea where their shady druggies of North Road went until about a month and later in mid-October. Dan was home alone and went to get some of his special Oreos that no one else can have. There's a story about the time I ate 2 of them and he lost it. There was not a single Oreo left. He went ballistic and ran screaming up to his sister, who claimed she didn't have a death wish and wanted to live past 12, so she didn't take any of his damn Oreos. And this kind of sent my cousin mixed signals. His parents knew much they meant to him, and he listened to a lot of creepypastas and stories about people in other houses who had these experiences. In fact, that's how I got introduced to Top 15s and Dylan narrates. He checked the rest of the kitchen pantry and found that nearly half of the food they would normally have was gone. He also noticed that his parents' secret candy cabinet was wide open, and a bunch of milk duds were gone. Alarm bells were at red flags completely. He called the police, and who else but the shady drug neighbor, the male one, was living in their attic. His tiny living space and a crawl space they didn't even know the house came with was complete with lots of food he's stolen, plus a phone charger his sister has been missing for a while and some of his sister's underpants. The man then said that there was a woman living on the shed and she was very unstable. The police found her with a hatchet in her hand. They were arrested and charged with a number of things, including animal cruelty, with the fact that the woman tortured a raccoon for almost 3 days before killing and eating it. This messed up Dan for a while, and he still has some very strange phobias that I have tolerance with for when I see him. He hasn't been himself since. This is my first post, so please bear with me. I was a pretty wild teen, and so was my best friend. In this story, I will call her Jenny. Jenny and her family moved about an hour away from our hometown when we were 14, so during summer break, I would go and stay with her. We mostly had the house alone, since her mom worked during the weeks. Heaven for teenagers, right? So on a Thursday night, we had ordered a pizza and I had a friend bring us some liquor, and we chilled out and watched scary movies most of the night. It was around midnight when we started hearing weird noises outside. At first, we chalked it out just hearing things because of the movies. But we started hearing footsteps on the porch, and we got scared. We cut the movie off and went and grabbed knives out of the kitchen, random blunt objects around the house. We hoarded up in her bedroom and called her mom. She told us to calm down because she had sent her brother to check on us, and he was probably trying to scare us. So we calmed down a little and didn't hear anything else. Her uncle came by about an hour later and swore he wasn't up there because his shift ended late. He ended up staying with us. Fast forward to Friday night. Jenny's mom came home and we felt way safer. So 2 a.m. rolls around, and being bored teenagers, we decided to sneak out. We walked around about 2 miles from her house when we started getting a weird feeling that we were being followed. I told her we should turn around and just head back home. We had talked maybe 10 minutes when we heard a chainsaw starting up, and what sounded like a dying cow. We ran as fast as we could back to her driveway, and the whole time we could hear something behind us and the chainsaw being cut on and off. We jumped the fence at her driveway and ran up the hill, and we looked back. We saw from what we could tell by the streetlight, an older man with black pants and a thick sweater. We kept watch out her window all night, even though he went away when we went in the house. Saturday rolls by around at Jenny's house, and Jenny's mom gets drunk. So do we, but she doesn't know because because she was pretty lit. So we all get bored and decide to play hide and seek in the yard at night. We were having fun, carefree, when all of a sudden we hear Jenny's mom I'll call her Stacy, scream. We came out of our hiding spots and to ask what was wrong. She told us she thought she had seen an old man peeking from behind a bush in the lower part of the yard. Jenny and I decided to tell her what happened the previous night. We all decided to keep a lookout and see if we saw him again, and if so, call her brother, who was a cop. So we went to sit on the porch. We didn't really see anything for a while and had almost completely calmed down. I saw movement from the corner of my eye, and I'll be damned, it wasn't the guy from the previous night standing at the edge of the house. I screamed. Jenny and Stacy saw him, and we ran into the house, locked the doors, and called Stacy's brother. He came by, but the creepy guy was gone. But he patrolled the house the rest of his shift, then came and stayed with us. We don't know who he was or what his problem was, but we didn't see him anymore that whole summer. I went back home about 3 days before school started back up, and ended up having a friend over, Kim, over for a night. We stayed up pretty late that night. My bedroom was upstairs, and I had windows open so we could blow our cigarette smoke out. Kim was at the window smoking, and she was like, "Hey, there's a weird guy standing at the top of your driveway." I jumped up off my bed to look in. Yes, it was the freaking same guy from Jenny's house. I totally freaked out and went downstairs and told my mom. She called the cops. The guy was arrested. Turns out the guy had a daughter who passed away, who I favored, and he became obsessed with me and felt like he was close to her again. He had followed my parents home and I home so he could watch me. He said he was protecting me, but I assured him I didn't feel safe. From what I heard, he ended up in a mental institution. Scariest time of my life. I hope I never experience anything like that again. So I live in a small place in the UK. At the end of my street, there's an old house that's been abandoned for 30 to 40 years. So it wasn't exactly the safest structure. But I was a kid who thought I was invincible. But the story took that feeling away from me. So I, at the time, entered the house through a broken down door. First, we explored the main floor, which was mainly dark and damp. So we got to the stairs, and we could go up the stairs or down into the basement. So we decided firstly to go to the basement. When we got to the bottom of the stairs, there was a big iron door that looked like it was made of rust. It took all my force, but I eventually pulled it open. The first thing I felt when I opened the door was a cold breeze. And I'm not talking like a small breeze, like from a fan. I mean like a spine-shivering breeze. Followed by a smell of rotten meat. But I was a tough kid at the time, so walking through, I located the smell to a dead rat in the corner of the room. While taking a good look around the room, I found amongst the graffiti a satanic symbol with a Nazi symbol to the left and 3 letters to the right. 666. At this point, I was freaking the fuck out. But I'll explain the way the room was designed in the main room. In the basement. The basement was a sort of fallout shelter shape, like a circular shape. At the other end is another big iron door. I walked through. Now I'm shaking. I opened this door and walked through. It was sort of a tunnel that went straight ahead and turned left when I turned left. I saw a kind of furnace. I got to the gate and heard a noise of a dripping noise. I brushed it off as a leaking pipe or a hole, seeming it was heavily raining outside. I went to leave the basement, but as soon as I turned, I saw a black shadow, and the second iron door slammed shut. So here I am, 14 years old, male, stuck in a damp, dark basement, terrified for my life. I was behind that door for 2.5 hours until I finally managed to kick this door down off its hinges. It obviously made a big bang. And I then hear footsteps above me. I sprint to the bottom of the steps, look up, and see no one. There's So I full tail sprint to the top of the top and out of the back door. I look back at the house and see a shadow in the top left window, and saw the same shadow I saw in the basement. I leaped the wall and ran home, which took me about 5 minutes. So I stayed away from that house for about 6 months until I had the urge to go upstairs in that house to the top floor. So I built up the courage, and once again, alone, I go into the house and go up to the stairs. There was 4 rooms upstairs, 1 basement and 3 bedrooms. I went into the bathroom and saw a smashed up mirror and checked behind the shower curtain. And the bathtub was covered in blood and maggots. My heart instantly dropped. I then decided to go into the bedroom. It was completely empty besides a wardrobe. So, me being the brave kid, I opened the door. As if I was looking for fucking Narnia or something. But what I found was truly terrifying. There was a box on the top shelf. I took it down and found a picture and a butterfly knife. What made me damn near cry was the fact that the picture was of me as I looked back at the house when I first went there. But there was no one there, so I skipped the second room and went to the third room, which is the room I saw the dark shadow. The first time I had been there, there was 2 things in the entire room. A noose in the corner of the room, with an old wooden rocking chair underneath the rope. I hauled ass out of the house, and never went back. I never told anyone about this experience until now. It's been 1 year since my second entry. The building has been destroyed, and a new house is in construction of the old one. I'm so happy that building is no longer there. I'm now 15, nearly 16, and I'm going on fine, but even writing this, my hands are shaking about what could have happened if I didn't have the power to kick that iron door in, and if anyone was there in either of my visits. So this happened to me outside of school around 2 years ago. It was 4 p.m. after school hours as my friend and I decided to stay behind and practice piano. We decided it was time for us to head back to my house, and we headed out the gate. We were almost at the gate that let us out of the school grounds when a man shouted, "Hey, could you help me, please? My car is broken down." Now, no one was around as it was way after school hours, and the staff were still inside packing away or working. I can't remember his facial features too well, but he had dark skin and black hair with some scruffy stubble and mustache. He looked like a normal, everyday man. He had next to him a silver family car, and his door open. My friend tried to pull me away after I had frozen in my spot, rooted to the ground. I was well aware of strangers and what could happen if you encountered the wrong person, but I have a sort of kind of natural and wonder if this man really needed help. Again, Mary tried to pull me away, and I could understand that. She's had similar experiences where her sister was almost kidnapped, so knew not to trust strangers by cars. I remember her saying to me, "Don't trust him. Whether he needs help or not, it's not worth taking the risk." By now, the man was pretty much begging for us to help him, saying he had a child, which was understandable, as this was the nursery car part represented by pink, and that he needed to get home. My kind nature had me take a couple steps towards the man, despite the fact that was shaking mess. I could hardly breathe and couldn't calm myself down. I never felt more terrified, but I still stepped forward, so unsure of what to do. The feelings that I had inside of me still confused me. I was basically having an internal war with myself as I was shaken to the core. Yet I wanted to help this man. Eventually, I was so sick to my knees that just a simple tug from my friend sent me out of the gate. We stopped for a minute, Mary hugged me and reassuring me. I don't know why I was so frightened. Then I looked up and saw the silver family car driving away. That sent me into fits and sobs and shakes. We both walked home, phones at the ready to call the cops if anything happened, but still shaking with the thought that we were almost kidnapped. The thing that makes everything so much worse, however, is that a student from a year above me claimed to have almost been kidnapped by a man of the same description. Dark skin, black hair, scruffy stubble, and a mustache. However, not the same car. Could it have been the same man? The thought of what could have happened if I hadn't had Mary with me still scares me. What if I had just walked up to the man? What if he just ran at me while I was rooted to the spot? I didn't report this to the police or to the school, like the other student did. It didn't help as they never found him. Just from the fact that it scared me, and at the time, I didn't want to talk about it. I've only just told my parents, and they claim I shouldn't have. I wish I did. So, creepy guy with the silver family car, let's not meet ever again. In late October, I started talking to a guy we will address as Paul. I met him online. Paul told me he was 20 and lived approximately 4 hours away from me. We talked all day, every day, for a week or two, and then things started getting weird. He was being very pushy, asking me for nudes and other weird things. I told him no, and he would get angry with me over it. I stopped talking to him for about a week, and then he messaged back apologizing, and I just went with it. I put it behind me. Then he began asking questions that creeped me out. I would get up off the couch after watching Jeopardy, like I do every day at 7, and he would ask me how Jeopardy went and if I got all the answers. Then I would come to my house after running like I did every day. I never did this at the same time every day, and he would ask me how my run went. I never told him I watched Jeopardy. I never tell anyone that I watched Jeopardy. I never told Paul that I run every day either. He just somehow knew that I did it. And when I did it, it happened about 5 or 6 times, and then it just stopped. It dropped him completely. I was creeped out, and I didn't want to be bothered with it anymore. Since then, I have moved into a different town, and of course, into a new home. This past week, I was watching movies in the living room while on my phone with my friend. We were up until about 3 or 4 a.m. watching scary movies. I heard some weird noises and saw some shadows, but I just figured it was the movie making me paranoid. We eventually called it a night, and I went to sleep. I woke up in the morning to a text message from a number that I didn't have saved on my phone. I read the message and was taken aback by it. It said, "What were you watching last night? LOL." I had no idea who this was. I ran the number on Facebook search, and it came back to Paul. Paul told me he lived 4 hours away, but he actually lived less than an hour away from where I do. I'm not sure what to think. Was this a coincidence, or do you think he's actually watching me? Tonight he has identified that I'm wearing a Florida Gators shirt, which is very rare considering I'm a diehard Knowles fan. Nobody who follows me on social media would be able to guess that I was wearing that shirt. How could he know this? Yes, I've contacted the police and made sure everything is locked. I have stick-on alarms on every door leading to the outside and reinforcement locks. Thanks in advance.